Thank you, Mr. President. In February 1954, in her early 20s, my late grandmother, Wilma, jumped in the back of an old truck at Gum Flat, which is out in Euchareena in between Orange and Wellington. Joining her in the back of the truck were her brothers and sisters and a big mob of cousins as well. Apparently there was about a dozen of them that jumped in the back of the truck and headed along to Dubbo, dirt roads in those days, of course, between Euchareena and Dubbo. The trip was obviously a huge adventure for the Trudgett family at the time. They were off to see the newly crowned Queen on her first visit to Australia. It would have been a rough old trip on no doubt a very hot February day, but apparently they did catch a glimpse of the Queen and Prince Philip, as did a reported 3/4 of the population of the country on that visit. And since that time, up until September 8, 2022, 70 years on, Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has been a steady and reliable constant in our lives. Obviously, the Queen's passing and the Queen herself meant many different things to many different people, and we've seen some lovely tributes here today that I've actually really enjoyed being able to sit and listen to. But for me, growing up in regional New South Wales, I spent a lot of time in clubs and halls throughout the regions, be it the RSL, the bowling club, the tennis club, the CWA hall, the community hall, or even our school hall. All, of course, were adorned with portraits of Queen Elizabeth. The quality of these portraits, I must say, varied from photocopied photos in a cheap frame through to grand portraits, but each provided a reassuring presence in these places as the portrait overlooked the activities. I think back to these halls. I think about an oversized urn making way too much noise, packets of assorted biscuits or other snacks either on decorated plates with glad wrap, or even homemade cakes in massive Tupperware containers where they'd write the name on it, just optimistically hoping that Tupperware container wouldn't make it into the stockpile underneath the fridge, underneath the cabinet. But all these scenes are also joined by the portrait of Queen Elizabeth, overlooking what was going on. There's a great deal of symbolism surrounding the royal family, obviously, and this, of course, refers also to Queen Elizabeth. And this has been evident in the past couple of weeks. To have lost this reassuring connection with so much of our past, this symbolism, this symbolic connection to our past will be really felt right across regional New South Wales. For me, it's the CWA halls, the books and paper clippings of my grandparents, and the story of Granny headed off to Dubbo in the back of the truck to catch a glimpse of the Queen back in 1954. I've recently also learnt of another family viewing, this time on the other side of my family. My Uncle David, with a bunch of flowers in hand, rushed out to meet the Queen's motorcade as it sped past his house in Orange back in 1970. Obviously, with a tight schedule to meet, the flowers were rejected at this time by the fast-moving motorcade, but David persistently proceeded to run several blocks into town, finally deliver the hand-picked flowers from his mum's garden to one of the Queen's handlers. These experiences, the old books, the newspapers, the story of when Granny saw the Queen, singing the national anthem, God Save the Queen, and the time Uncle David was nearly run over by a Rolls Royce, are all echoed across regional New South Wales and symbolic of a time gone by and memories we need to make sure we hang on to. I can't help but imagine what the Queen might have meant to my grandmothers in particular in the 50s and 60s, to see a young woman in such a position of power, and a young mother to boot, holding these positions with such grace and such dignity. Whatever your political views and whatever future path we might take in relation to our Constitution, you can't help but admire and respect Queen Elizabeth and the leadership she demonstrated with a style and poise rarely seen. While we're remembering the life of Her late Majesty, I also wanted to recall a visit from the Queen along with Prince Philip to Hawkesbury Ag College out at Richmond back in 1970. Obviously a bit before I was there completing my ag degree under the banner of University of Western Sydney. And I'm proud to wear the college tie in recognition of this visit as I give this speech. It was, of course, a great honour for the college to have the Queen visit, and Principal Doman of the time wrote in the Hack Journal, "The college is honoured by a visit from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. It's a compliment not just to us here present, but to all our predecessors who have erected an edifice presumably of royal notice. Most of my learnings of this visit come from a book by Bruce Braithwaite titled Challenge and Change, The History of Hawkesbury Ag College, 1966 to 1991. In this book we learn it was indeed an historic day, heralding the first visit of a reigning sovereign to the Hawkesbury district. Included in the itinerary of the Queen and Prince Philip was a private visit to the college on Thursday the 30th of April 1970. Students and staff and their families gathered at the Oval for the occasion. While there, the royal couple inspected the Arab horses and the dairy cattle out on the Oval, as well as visiting the beef cattle section to view pedigree stock and chat with the students. Prince Philip even got a cheese-making demonstration in the college dairy. A bit of an amusing side note, and we've heard lots about the Queen's sense of humour, so I hope she wouldn't mind this, but in a contribution to Challenge and Change, a former staffer, Joyce Dinan, wrote, "The Minister for Agriculture demanded that a long-haired student be removed from the crowd. Questioned, the student was found to be a ministerial photographer." There was some other silly behaviour associated with this trip. The hack ironical included an alternate itinerary printed under the name The Skulking Wit. This itinerary for Queen Liz and Prince Flip included an inspection of an honour guard of chickens, a flyby of a squadron of bees in formation, and viewing of a student demonstration and riot. It was also advised that student door openers were not to accept tips and that the visit would be concluded with 3 cheers of "You bloody beaut, Your Majesty." Well, I won't offer these 3 cheers myself. I will thank Her late Majesty for her service, pass my condolences on to her family, and take the opportunity to reflect on a history and a heritage that I'm sure others will also take the time to remember. Having recently myself, only in the last couple of years, lost my grandparents, I also have a special condolence for William, the new Prince of Wales, and Harry, who of course have not just lost the Queen but lost their beloved grandmother. When it comes to public service, the Queen will long be held as the gold standard for those to follow. The selfless dedication to the role and the humility in which she undertook it will always inspire. Whatever views you hold towards the monarch, we must count ourselves lucky to have had Her late Majesty as the head of the Commonwealth for the past 70 years. We will never see another like her.